Hello, thank you for listening to A Glimpse of the Kingdom. I am David Pendergrass. I want to pick back up where we left off, and that is, I was giving some responses to an atheist, Stephen, who is in a debate with Justin Brierley. And the first part one of my podcast, I hope you'll listen to that. And here's part two. I'm going to skip a lot of the middle of the debate. Justin does a good job. You can listen to the debate yourself. I hope you do listen to it for yourself. I hope you listen to anything at all that's helps you think critically about Christianity, and also helps you listen carefully to what atheists might say in response. A lot of times it can help us Christians think clearly about what it is we believe. Here is the ending statement, or the final statement in the opening dialogue, as it were, between Justin Brierley and Stephen Woodford, and I'll have some responses to his last remarks.
Well, the topic hasn't been tonight about atheism, but I do feel like I should leave a few notes on that. An atheist is simply someone who doesn't believe in God. You don't have to have certain positions on free will, on anything even. You can still be religious. Buddhists are, for example. They don't believe in a God, but they are atheist. So to conflate materialism and atheism, I do think is a mistake. But
let me interject real quickly. I was going to say stop, but I just mean stop his current flow to make sure this is clear. Some of this I've responded to before in other podcasts, but just to make sure it's clear. The first thing is, it's true that not all atheists are materialists. A materialist, I was talking to someone the other day about this. I think it was my daughter, actually, and this is such a good point. I forget of how people think, other people think. And outside of philosophy, someone who's materialist means they're greedy. They're greedy. They want a lot of material things. They want a lot of stuff. In philosophy, materialism or materialist does not have that meaning or that connotation or denotation. In fact, what it means is it's a worldview. A materialist or materialism is the worldview that all that exists, all of reality, is just made of matter and or energy. Those are exchangeable in science, matter and energy. So that's what a materialist is. And in this debate, Justin Brierley, he attacked materialism at times, and he was right to do so because, one is, his objections to materialism were true. Materialism is false. The second reason is because most atheists out there in the world, as far as my interaction, that is their worldview. They're atheists. Yep, they believe that all that exists is matter and energy. Having said that, it is true that not every atheist is a materialist. And he gives example of Buddhist and so forth. That's right. They might believe in other things, other kind of beings that are not made of matter and energy, maybe. But even that's debated. But anyway, the point is, I wish to still concede the point. Most atheists are materialist, but we can't conflate them, but it is true that most are. The second thing I'd say is, and this is a very, very, very common thing every Christian says, a thinker who says this, and I've said it many times, he's absolutely demonstrably false in his understanding of atheism. An atheist is not someone who just, quote, doesn't believe God exists. That is not the definition of atheism. That's a new way to define atheism the last maybe even decade, maybe. I mean, this is a new phenomenon. You're on the cutting edge of a new phenomenon. That is a radical redefinition. Atheism has always meant, and all the, in fact, to the encyclopedias, dictionaries, journal entries, everybody knows atheism means atheos in Greek. The alpha primitive, the alpha denotes, it negates what comes after it. So the theos means God or deity. Atheos means the belief that no God exists. You're holding to the proposition no God exists. Atheism is not a statement of your psychological beliefs. It's not, I don't feel it, I don't think so, I'm not sure, I don't believe it. It is the proposition no God exists. And that's what atheism is. So when he says atheism is just the belief of no, that's just false. But like I said, you're going to experience that a lot in modern atheistic discussions and debates. Personally, my own view is, when I have had this discussion a few times with them, I say what I just said, that is, I know how to read basic Greek, and I know what these words mean. I know how they're defined in every world possible, except for online atheist communities and people like Christopher Hitchens and Sam Harris and whatever. And they do this to change what they think is the burden of proof. They can just say, I just don't believe it. Since I don't believe something, it means I don't bear the burden of proof. You Christian theists do, because you say God does exist. All the burden of proof is on you. And I've said this in other podcasts. I completely concur that whoever makes a claim bears the burden of proof. If you were trying to demonstrate it, you can believe that the earth is flat. You can believe all things you want without having to prove it. But if someone said, demonstrate how it's true, and you said, I just believe it, okay, I mean, You can, but if you're in a court of law, that doesn't work. You need to demonstrate something is true. So if you say God exists, well, it's a fair question to ask, why do you believe that? What's your evidence for that? It's exactly the same true, by the way, if you say, I don't believe God exists. You say, why is that? And you say, well, there's no evidence, and I just don't believe it. That's different from saying, what you should, which I'm an atheist, which means God does not exist. And then you ask for evidence for that. So any kind of propositional statement requires that. Those are the two things I want to say at this point.
But, well, we only have so much time, and I've only got 5 more minutes of yours, so here we go. As covered throughout this conversation, rationality implies the conformity of one's beliefs with one's reasons to beliefs, and one's actions with one's reasons for action. In every endeavour of our lives, you and I rely on evidence proportionate to the claim. If I claim that I am dyslexic, which I am, you have to exercise your epistemology. You will assign a likelihood to my claim, and if, in the past, you found me to be trustworthy, you will be inclined to accept my assertion. However, if I had the gall to claim to you that I am God incarnate, the fact that I am trustworthy would be nowhere near enough to convince you. You would necessitate extraordinary evidence for my quite frankly absurd claim, and rightfully so. Now imagine that I was a talented magician, which I certainly am not, an illusionist such as James Randi or Derren Brown, and I shocked you all with feats of what appears to be superpowers, which is exactly what illusionists look like to ignorant crowds. Would you then believe that I am God incarnate? No. Okay, well, let's say that 12 of you, say you find people here, you was to write this down, and you was to write down your personal testimonies dealing with my performance, detailing my performance, but of course some of you have managed to get contradictions. Would, in the year 4019, people then be justified in believing that I am God incarnate? No. Well, fine. Let's say that your accounts were translated, copied, amended, and then translated, copied, and amended again. Would the citizens of the future then be justified in believing me as God? No. Fine. What if I made claims about the cosmos that seem true, only to be shown in thousands of years not to be? If the citizens of the 5th millennia then began interpreting my words as allegory and metaphor rather than literal, would you then be justified in believing me to be God incarnate? No.
I completely agree. I completely agree. I would not have reason to believe you. Now, everybody knows that what he's attempting to do here is make an analogy, a modern analogy of what he thinks people have done with Jesus. But this is more evidence, as I said in part 1, that I'm not sure, if I give him the benefit of the doubt and assume he's not lying, or he's not being facetious, or he's not delusional, that he really means this, it means that it demonstrates he doesn't know what Christianity is. He doesn't understand. Christians can be a Christian for all kinds of reasons. I mean, if you're listening to this, I don't know why you came to faith. And if you're a Christian, if you call yourself a Christian, I don't know what your reasons were. And I've met all kinds of Christians. They're Christians. They grow up and eventually come to the faith because they grew up in households that way, or their parents said so, or they had a real genuine religious experience, or maybe they were an alcoholic and had this phenomenal, I mean, on and on, and I don't know. All I know is the rise of the early church did not commence because they thought Jesus was trustworthy. And because he said certain things about himself, therefore they believed him. That's precisely what did not happen. What happened was, when he said the stuff he said, Jews tried to kill him. That's what happened. They didn't say, we trust him though. Instead what they did is they tried to kill him on several occasions, and eventually they got the Romans to do it. Even his closest disciples abandoned him. His closest disciples, read John chapter 6. People abandon Jesus all the time. So there was no point where they said, well, we trust him, therefore he must be divine. That's just not how it worked. What changed, apparently, according to the evidence of the documents we have, the earliest documents we have, what changed everyone's mind that Jesus was not a delusional and or evil person, because those are the two options. He's either crazy, Mark chapter 3, or he's filled with Satan. The only thing that changed their minds, apparently, was his resurrection and ascension. and an accompanying experience of the Holy Spirit. It was not because they trusted Jesus. They didn't, in fact, trust that he was correct when he was crucified. His crucifixion was the sign that he was, in fact, either delusional or filled with Satan. It took a resurrection and ascension to do that. So if he wants to tell a modern story, he should say, imagine I am seen as trustworthy, and I say things that seem completely right, but yet completely countercultural and revolutionary. And I heal people, and I can walk on water, and I exorcise demons. And eventually I die, and I'm raised to a new glorious body, and I appear in and out of rooms, and I send the Holy Spirit that changes people's lives for 2,000 years. That's a good narrative. That's a good analogy. The answer is, would you be rational to believe in such a person? The answer is, yeah, you would. Yeah, you would. But not if you weren't resurrected, not if there weren't something that confirmed it. That's why this whole narrative demonstrates he just doesn't know what Christianity is. But it gets better. Listen here, this is the end of it.
In my opening speech, I mentioned that the final nail on the cross for Christianity. But it takes two to hold even a fictional character, and so here's the other.
Now, right there, when he says fictional character, Justin brings it up later on, and I'm so glad he did. If anyone ever, and I've said this before in podcasts, if you're a regular listener, I'm sorry, but let me keep repeating myself on purpose on this one. If you ever meet a person who says anything like Jesus didn't exist or he's a fictional character, just understand, I'm not being mean, just understand they don't know anything about history. Nothing. Nothing. No serious scholar on the globe who teaches at any major university at all would think such nonsense. That's just complete gibberish. And so if someone says that, it demonstrates this is not an open-minded, rational, kind person who's trying to have an honest conversation about Christianity. This is it. So that's a sign. That's all. It's just a sign for you.
So far as most Christians are concerned, if Jesus was born of a virgin and rose from the dead, he must therefore be the Son of God. So logistically, this is premise 1. Jesus was born of a virgin. Premise 2. Jesus rose from the dead. Conclusion. Therefore, Jesus is the Son of God.
Now, that might be true that there are, as he said, according to certain Christians. It might be true that there are certain Christians, or some Christians, or even most Christians, that's not biblical. The New Testament never says, ever, because Jesus was born of a virgin, because Jesus was resurrected, it therefore means he is the Son of God. It doesn't say it that way. The earliest Christians seem to have had multiple reasons to come to believe that Jesus was not just the Son of God, but the unique Son of God, the one-of-a-kind Son of God, like it says in John 3:16. All kinds of people can be called Son of God. The entire nation of Israel can be called Son of God. The nation of Israel was never resurrected. The nation of Israel wasn't born of a virgin, but yet it's called the Son of God. So again, this is basic New Testament understanding and scholarship. So if I were talking to a person like this, I might say there might be Christians who think that, and what you might say in your syllogism might be true. It's just that I'd rather stay on topic and say the New Testament never says that at all, and therefore I certainly don't believe it. So here he goes on, listen.
And every once in a while, such as Numbers 31, verses 17 through 18, this God wants us to commit a genocide in which we slaughter every man, little boy, and every woman who have not known a man by lying with him, but to keep for ourselves the little girls who have not known a man by lying
with him. Now, how do we go from Jesus, virgin birth, resurrection, to Numbers chapter 31? Which is, if you haven't read your Numbers 31 in a while, I had to go look at myself. Oh, that was something about Moses. Oh, yeah. That's when Moses is really, really ticked off with the armies because they didn't do exactly what God had commanded them. We went from Jesus to Numbers 31. This excursus is completely irrelevant, and surely he's not too dumb enough to not understand that. The odds are fairly high, if I'm giving the benefit of the doubt, if he's not an absolute incompetent fool, the odds are very high that he throws it in there because he thinks it's embarrassing, that somehow it's going to make Christians embarrassed. Let me pause for a second and say this, as I would say to Christopher Hitchens and all of them. Let's assume for a second that it's true that Numbers 31 should be accurately interpreted, that Moses tells the people to go kill these men and the women, and that they go do it, and they did every single bit of it. Does it mean God doesn't exist? What conceivable difference does this make to the existence of God? We might think, well, I don't like that God. Okay. Yeah. Some people don't like me. I'm still a parent. Well, what conceivable difference does this make? What conceivable difference does it make to the Christian story? The answer is, it does not. It has no bearing whatsoever on it. But it's, I guess, a fun, cheap shot for what they think is a total embarrassment for Christian. And I might come back to that in just a second.
But here's the thing. Even if we grant the extraordinary claim that Jesus was born of a virgin, which we don't have sufficient reason to do, and we were to grant the extraordinary claim that Jesus resurrected, which we don't have sufficient reason to do, the conclusion of Jesus being the Son of God does not follow. This, I would argue, is the greatest non sequitur to have ever plagued humanity. Christians do not accept such illogical, irrational, absurd conclusions outside of their faith, and this sends a clear message, which I think we have seen today. One epistemology for Christianity and one epistemology for everything else. This is precisely why debating with Christians has been characterized as playing chess with a pigeon. It doesn't matter how good you are at chess, the pigeon will knock over the pieces, take a dump on the board, and strut around as if they won. So, sorry, Justin. To be clear, thank you, where you're forced to. To be clear, according to some definitions of rationality, Christianity is rational. But the same definition makes almost all other religions rational. To wield such a definition is to win the battle, but at the cost of the war. It's akin to saying, if Christianity is true, then Christianity is rational. This can be done with any faith. If Hinduism is true, then it's rational to be a Hindu. Except this isn't actually how rationality works. Rationality means one's beliefs corresponding with one's reasons to believe. And unless we are privy to adequate reason, our beliefs are not justified, even if the belief is true. In conclusion, Christians are not necessarily irrational, plenty of which are incredibly intelligent. I'm not so naive to think this. But Christianity most certainly is not. It is completely irrational.
Okay, well, there's not much more to say about that. When he talks about the syllogism not following, if you're born of a virgin, you resurrect from the dead, therefore you're the Son of God, is the worst non sequitur that has ever plagued humanity. I sure hope that's just a hyperbole. But in any case, I concur with him that in Judaism, they would not have thought virgin birth or resurrection equals Son of God. I concur. I think for them it took a lot more than that. It took several things, such as Jesus doing things that only God the Father would do, and the belief that God the Father called him his son, when he quotes from Psalm 2:7 as baptism. So when he quotes from Psalm 2 and he says, "This is my son," and of course in Mark chapter 9 when he does it again, when he says, "This is my son, listen to him," the belief that Jesus actually was told that by the Father, his resurrection, his ascension, probably took the inspiration of the Holy Spirit. Probably multiple reasons that the earliest Jewish Christians came to the belief that Jesus was the unique Son of God. So that last part, I'm sorry, it just seems completely irrelevant. The last thing about rational was relevant because the title was "Is believe in God rational?" It's true that if someone says something is true, therefore it's rational, I agree that doesn't follow. It doesn't follow. If something to be called rational means you've come to a conclusion based on certain evidences, certain reasons, and that the reasons themselves are rational. I have a few things to say about that. One is, okay, that's fine. I'm fine. I don't want to debate how to define things rational. What's interesting to me and sad and frustrating too at the same time is this, and I hear this all the time in these discussions, and that is the need for everything to be rational. Now look, I'm a thinker type in Myers-Briggs. I love things to be rational. I love for things to make sense. It's just overwhelmingly arrogant, condescending, and just stupid to think that everyone must come to their beliefs through logical syllogisms and court-approved evidences. It's just stupid. It's just stupid. It's not real world. It's not normal life. It's not natural life. It doesn't represent most human beings' existence because people aren't Spock. Even Spock was half human. They're not Vulcan. They're not Vulcan. And there are, thinker-type nerds like myself and much worse nerds than me who think that's their ideal. Their ideal is never to make an emotional judgment, never to make it a subjective judgment, never to have a preference, just everything be just absolutely logical, and no matter what I do. I mean, okay, you can if you want, but the demand that that's what you want must be the demand of all humans is just pompous arrogance. Who do you think you are? That's just mere arrogance. Now, he's an evolved chimp. Who cares if he's arrogant? Well, I'm a Christian, and arrogance is a sin. Arrogance is a bad thing. But in his worldview, I'm sure it's not. Evolved chimps can do what they want, and they don't have any control what they think or believe or feel anyway, because arrogance is forced upon them by their evolutionary drive as an evolved chimp that he is. So it doesn't matter in his worldview, but it matters in mine. The last thing I'd say is this, and this is a very common thing as well that I've heard in atheist debates and discussions all the time, is the last thing, and that is, there is no evidence. There's no reason to believe Jesus was born for a reason, or there's no good reason. There's no reason. There's no reason to believe Jesus existed. There's no reason to believe Jesus was resurrected. There's no reason. There's no reason. It's another sign of overwhelming arrogance and pomposity and narcissism, and oftentimes it's just nonsense. It's just nonsense to say something so condescending. Listen, I think Mormonism is false. I think Mormonism is false. But they give evidences for it. Mormon scholars give their reasons for it. They give evidences for it. It just I don't find those evidences convincing. But it's not that they don't have anything that they say in response or try to provide in response. I think Islam is false. But it's not that Islamic scholars don't give some response to what their beliefs are and their contradictions and so forth. They give responses. They give things that we would call evidences on their behalf. It's just that I don't find their evidences convincing. And oftentimes, like court of law, I would say the evidence isn't even admissible. I shouldn't say most. I know a lot of Christians who are Christians, not at all because they can tell you what the evidences are. In a courtroom, they couldn't, lay out on the table all kinds of different hardcore truths and facts about ancient concepts of death and resurrection and what ancient Jews thought about XYZ. But nevertheless, they can tell you reasons they're a Christian, and it might not be what you wanted to hear, but they'll give you reasons. But, okay, that's what most Christians, all serious Christian thinkers in the history of Christianity for 2,000 years can give you reasons. And it's the same reasons why today people are still converting to Christianity. So my final point is, when people say things like this, that is, there are no reasons. There are no reasons. It just demonstrates once again a kind of overwhelming arrogance. My response is, in all fairness and kindness as I can muster, which is, you might not find the reasons convincing. That doesn't mean there are none. So at least, and if you really do think there are no reasons at all to believe it, you are overwhelmingly ignorant. And what in the world are you doing debating a Christian if you think there are no reasons? If you don't know that we have ancient documents that come from the lifetime of the people who were there, if you don't know these facts, if you think Christians just woke up one day and had indigestion and thought, oh, I guess I believe this guy named Jesus, it's worse than I thought. So in any case, this is the very common charge against Christians. Y'all don't have reasons at all. Well, yes, we do. Now, my challenge has been to Christians for a long time. I can't believe this podcast. I've got several hundred now, and I can't believe it. But I've said this repeatedly throughout my adult life and ministry and podcast and blogs. I strongly beg, I exhort, I plead you, Christian, to think of the reasons you have. I concur that Christians are a better witness for Jesus if we have reasons to give skeptics. I don't think you have to be a world's leading scholar. I don't have to read Alvin Plantinga, the philosopher at Notre Dame, has to be your best friend. All I'm saying is, I think it serves the cause of Christ more if you don't say this when someone says, why are you a Christian? Or I just am, or my parents were Christian, or it works for me. Those are dumb things to say about why you're a Christian. I hope to the good Lord Jesus at some point you say something along the lines of, because Christianity is true, and I know it's true, and here are my reasons for it. Now, you don't have to talk that way. You don't have to go get any degrees, but I think it helps the cause of Christ because it is true. There are reasons to believe it. If someone said, David, are you married? Yes. Why? How do you know you're married? I just do. I just am. No, I have reasons to know that I'm married. This is just a commonsensical thing to think about it. So anyway, I hope and pray that helps for you. Hope and pray that as you talk about your faith with non-believers, that these kind of podcasts might help you. I will say it for the umpteenth time in America. That means an indefinite. I've said it over and over and over. The best thing to always do is ask the person in front of you what they believe. But these kind of podcasts, my hope is that it gives you some preparation to think about some common things that are said. Not to go for the jugular, not to make fun of them, not to be evil, whatever, but just to be Christian and be a little more informed in your own mind. God bless you. Well, the conversation isn't finished. You can always reach out to me on social media. Are you on Facebook? I am too. At Glimpse of the Kingdom. Glimpse of the Kingdom on Facebook. Be sure to like it and you can see updates there. Also, if you're on Twitter, check me out at Dr. D. Pendergrass, at Dr. D. Pendergrass, or at Glimpse the King, at Glimpse the King. And I try my best to respond to comments and questions on there as quickly as I can. If you want more, there are many more resources on the podcast and my blog. Go to my website, davidpendergrass.com, and you can see a full list of the podcast, and my blog is available for free. Are you active in a church right now? I'd be happy to come out to your church and do all kinds of classes and workshops there. Check out davidpendergrass.com, davidpendergrass.com for more information. And may God in His great grace give you even just a glimpse of His kingdom this week. See you next time.